email? What does it mean?
Communication is the imparting or exchanging of information or news.
The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place.
Conversation is the oral exchange of sentiments, observations, opinions, or ideas.
Forbes Books Radio presents The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett.
Welcome back to part 2 of my conversation with Chester Elton, organizational culture, employee engagement, and leadership expert, co-founder of The Culture Works, and best-selling co-author of more than 14 books, including All In, The Carrot Principle, The Best Team Wins, and the soon-to-be-released Anxiety at Work. We resumed the conversation with a discussion about the importance of the human factor in customer service with an example from his book, The Best Team Wins. There was a Wendy's story where a customer, I guess, texted in that they got the wrong order again, and they're driving and they're angry, and I guess customer service reaches back out to them, and they're coming back from a chemotherapy appointment and they got 50 plus miles still to drive, and somebody on the team says, well, basically they call ahead to another Wendy's location that's on their route, and then text them back and say, pull off at this route, here are the directions, your order will be ready for you, we're going to refund your money. And I love that the technology certainly enabled that to happen because of the texting back and forth, but a human being had to step in and really fix that.
Absolutely. And, that family for the rest of their lives, when they're on a road trip and they take the exit and they've got a McDonald's, or a Wendy's, they're going to Wendy's. You create those moments where, somebody cared about you enough. And what I love is they got the story, like they understood that these people were in a tough situation. They're already dealing with all this stuff. The last thing they needed was for you to get their order wrong. Do you know what I mean? And it sounds like a silly thing. I wanted fries and I didn't get fries. But you know what? When you've been through chemotherapy and you're feeling like crap, you want your fries, And the fact that they made it happen and then recovered so beautifully, refunded their money, got them the order. I'm sure they threw in a Frosty or something, and said, you know what, we wish you well in your recovery. When you think of good things that happened today, we hope you'll think of Wendy's. And of course they will.
Yeah, I think I know I certainly have had this happen where I get on the road and stop and get something and get down, get 20 minutes down the road, reach in the bag, realize it's not the right thing, and just get so mad because you're not going to turn around and go back. You're making your trip to wherever you're going. And my wife is always saying, well, just check the bag. I'm like, I don't want to check the bag. It should how hard is it to put the right bagel in, right? I mean, so,
It's a bagel and it's coffee. Yeah.
I already gave up on the idea that you can't make change. If I give you the 3 pennies, you have no idea what I'm doing. I've already gave up on that, but please get the bagel right. A thing I've been reading about lately, and I was really glad to see you write about it as well, is the idea of continuous feedback rather than feedback given annually or semi-annually. In fact, you say that ongoing conversations play a role in managing to the one. Can you expand a little?
Well, I'll tell you the lessons we've learned, particularly, in COVID, is that when you're going through any kind of change, 2 things need to skyrocket. One is communication, and the other is gratitude. Communication, like I coach these executives. He goes, I think I'm communicating too much. I said, you know what? If you think it's too much, it's probably about right. It really is probably about right. And gratitude needs to go up because in any kind of change, people need to know that they're valued and their voice is heard. No better way to do that than to call somebody out, recognize them, praise them, simple, moments of gratitude. So yeah, ongoing communication. I love leaders go, hey, I put it in the weekly email. I said, yeah. Your email and 400 other people's emails, and that's the other thing about constant communication is vary the method. Call people, Zoom calls, team meetings, town hall meetings, emails, texting. People learn in different ways. There are some people, like my kids are so funny. I'll phone them. There's the Canadian in me. I phone them up, You phone them and they text me back, what's up? And so, and I text them back and I go, this is your dad who paid for your college degree. When I phone you, you pick up. And yet if I want to get their attention, I don't email them. I don't phone them. I text them and they respond. Other people, if you want their attention, it's Facebook because they're on Facebook 24/7, right? Know the medium.
For me, it's definitely the phone. If you want to get my attention, call me because otherwise I'm lost in 6,000 emails, and so it's better to call me. And in fact, I opened the podcast with a quote from George Bernard Shaw that goes, The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. That's why I like conversation, because conversation removes that illusion where I tell you what I think and you can respond back with the way you heard it, which is always the better way to go.
Absolutely.
Now, in the book, you also talk about aspirational conversations, which I really like the sound of them. By the way, I ended up going off on a side binge there because it immediately made me think of Al Franken's skit on Saturday Night Live where he's sitting in front of a mirror saying positive things about himself to himself, where he goes, and he always ends with, and doggone it, people like me. But it turns out those were called daily affirmations, not aspirational conversations. So talk about those.
I love those scenes. One of my favorites was he says, I don't ever when I'm boxing, I don't ever want that other boxer's gloves to touch my lips because you don't know where those gloves have been. It was just hilarious. The thing about that is that people want to know, where am I going? It's coaching, really, is what you're talking about. And the younger generations want to know, what's my pathway forward? One of the number one reasons that the millennial and Gen Z generation leave isn't so much that they're not happy at work, is there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to grow. So when you have these aspirational conversations, hey, what do we do really well around here? What have you seen that other people do really well that we could do here? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Those kinds of conversations are really meaningful to people because, and then as a leader, you can say, look, in 5 years, I want to take time off and travel the world. Great. That's good to know. Or I want to, stop and have a family, or I want to be the CEO, whatever that is. We learned that a lot from a guy named Scott O'Neill, one of the great leaders that we've had the privilege to know. He's in the sports industry. We met him at the NBA, then he ran Madison Square Garden. Now he's part of the ownership that owns the New Jersey Devils hockey team and the Philadelphia 76ers. And he said, you've got to be talking to your people. And he says, look, by the way, you talk to people in the sports industry, they say, you want to grow a career? Go work for Scotty because he'll grow you. He'll grow you. And he says, look, I'll have conversations with my people. And I say, look, in 5 years, I want to be the marketing director for a Major League Baseball team. And he'll say, well, we don't own a baseball team, right? He says, the thing is, I know guys that do. And they come to the basketball games and they come to the hockey games. And when they do, I'm going to introduce you. Now, in order for me to do that, I need you to bring your best every day. I need you to be world-class every day because I'm not going to introduce you to them unless you're the best. And so there's this wonderful compact. If you really work hard for me, I will move heaven and earth to get you where you want to be in 5 years. That's our deal. You bring your A game every day, I'm going to be your biggest cheerleader.
Right.
Makes sense.
It really does. And I've certainly experienced that with people on my team where I've got some people that, frankly, the reason they work for us and our people have been with us for mostly over 15, 20 years is because I don't bug them, right? Here's the job, go do it. And I got other people that if I'm not talking to them monthly, then they're worried. So it's funny that there's a certain amount of touch and feedback that individuals need or want. And in this case, it isn't just age-based. It actually is. I've got some that I had one guy that just retired and he was one of those, I want to talk to you every quarter about how I'm doing. And, so it's funny.
And know what the cadence is. Some people need it every week. Some people once a month. Some people once a year. Just, tell me what you need done and I'll get it done,
Yeah, I know. I definitely know that my strategy at first was wrong when when the first person asked me for that, I'd say, well, I give you feedback every 2 weeks on your paycheck. If it's signed, then I like what you're doing. And that was not the right answer.
Yeah, if the check clears, everything's fine. Yeah.
Now, you suggested these aspirational conversations be held on a fixed day and have a structured format. Can you dig into that a little bit?
Well, yeah. If it's ad hoc, the idea is, it's catch as catch can. If you schedule it and it's a regular, and you turn off your phone, you're not distracted, and you really focus on that person, then, there's accountability both ways. When I'm coming to the meeting as the employee, I know what we're going to talk about. I'm going to be prepared. We've set this time aside. I've got my notes from the last time we talked, and it's really personal development and it's sacred time. We've scheduled it. We're not distracted. We're talking about you. We're talking about your career. We're talking about things that are going well. We're talking about things we need to work on. We're going to talk about where do you want to be. And that kind of respect, I think, is really important, as opposed to, hey, we haven't talked yet. You got 5 minutes? Why don't you walk with me on the way to the bar and we'll chat. The message is pretty clear that you're doing this because HR made you and you need to check the box.
Right. I mean, I actually thought it was pretty thoughtful and insightful that you even recommend having the meeting in the format that they want. So if it's go get coffee, if it's go for a walk, if it's whatever that format that makes that person comfortable is the way to go. I thought that was really insightful.
Well, yeah, because some people don't want to talk about it at the workplace. Let's go for lunch. Let's get out because I people might come in and I just don't want to be embarrassed, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think this is where the idea of the individual development plan came in, which I really liked. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, it comes back to some of those core questions. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What kind of development? What tools do you need? Let me hear your voice. Let me give you your opinion and map it out. Are there conferences that you should be going to? Is there a degree that you're going to need to really get to where you want to be? And how will the company support that as far as tuition and time off and so on? I mean, really map it out and review it on a regular basis. How are we doing? Because priorities change. One of the things we learned with the motivators assessment is motivators change. Boy, through COVID, I guarantee you motivators realigned in a hurry.
Yeah, you even mentioned though in that section of the book that the onus is still on the employee or the worker to do their part to make the goals happen, right? So the boss is responsible for allowing these things to happen, putting some things in place, but there's work to be done on the other side as well. It's not just let's talk about your thing and then I'll see you in another month.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we've made a mistake in messaging is that an employee's engagement is up to the manager. That as a manager, my responsibility is to engage you. Well, the compact is no, you're responsible for your engagement. If you don't take your engagement seriously, there's nothing I can do that's going to change that. So that's part of the compact. Look, I'm going to put you in a position to succeed, right? I'm going to give you the tools you need. If you're not interested, it doesn't matter. So I love where you're going with this, and I think it's an important message, is that it's not a one-way street. Oh, well, my boss. Well, what about you? What did you do?
I can give you the best equipment in the world. I can give you the best training in the world. I could put you in the right place, but if you don't want to climb that mountain, I can't really help you. I'm not putting you on my shoulders and climbing.
Yeah, and listen, think about yourself. How many books have you put on your bedstead? Brilliant books that you never cracked the cover. You bought it. You put it on it. You put it where you could see it, and you think, well, maybe if I slept on it, it would just get in my head or something. You can have the most beautiful books in the world on your bookshelf. If you don't ever read them, it doesn't matter.
Boy, they look good though.
Yeah, it's impressive when people come over.
As I mentioned, I work a lot with project teams, which by design are temporary in nature and often made up of people that don't know each other at all or very well. And you offer some suggestions to quickly and successfully get those teams up to being productive quickly. What are some of those?
Well, do things together, I think, is really important. You go back to the International Space Station, talk about what's important to you. Let's do things together. A brilliant leader that we've been privileged to know for over 20 years is David Koshish. He's the head of Comp and Ben at American Express. Builds brilliant teams. He does one-on-ones with them. He understands them. And then he gets them to serve together. And I think, Clint, this is brilliant. They go do Habitat for Humanity. They'll go to a care center and they'll do the gardening. They'll paint the building. I mean, he brings all the stuff. They go up and this is obviously pre-COVID, but they'd go up in a bus together and there's conversations and there's sandwiches and sodas. And, I think, you break out. Yes, we want to talk about the team and the work and getting it done and serving our customers. Absolutely, that's core. Then go do something. And I'll tell you, my dad, who's one of my great inspirations, he said, the only people you don't love are people you haven't served. Think about that. The only people you don't love are people you haven't served. So serve each other, find a noble cause, adopt a charity, go work at a soup kitchen, go clean up a park, go be mentors to middle school kids in an underprivileged neighborhood or something. And he's brilliant at that. Well, it creates relationships and you tell stories and you've got a common memory, a common event. Go to a sporting event, go to a minor league baseball game. I'm Canadian. I don't think anything brings people together better than a hockey game. It's fast, they're skilled, it's violent, it's perfect.
Well, not in Atlanta, Georgia. We've run 2 hockey teams off, so I mean, it doesn't last here.
Yes, you have.
Now, I found the affiliation theme fascinating, and I've observed, obviously, anecdotally, the power of friends at work, but you gave some impressive numbers based on the research. Why is affiliation so powerful?
Well, this taps into a lot of work that Gallup did, that the highly engaged employees had a best friend at work. I mean, you spend so much time at work. If you don't have somebody that you love and trust at work, it's, you're punching the clock. And those relationships are just so important. Somebody that you can go to that say, hey, listen, I need you to cover for me. It's the championship game. I got to be there. It's my daughter's first ballet recital. If she looks out there and doesn't see mom or dad, I may never recover. Those relationships. Or, hey, how did you get that done? How did you get that through HR? How come your dentist is better than mine? Those kinds of conversations that make, it's kind of the drop of oil in the machinery of business. When you've got a good friend at work, a confidant, things just run smoother, and that's why those affiliations and relationships are always going to be important. I love what you said. Technology is great and enables a lot of things. Humans have to step in because humans are dealing with humans. And the more human we can be with each other, the better off we're going to be.
Yeah, I think that a lot of leaders sometimes are short-sighted when they look at it and say, oh, this water cooler talk, it's not productive, it's taking time out of the workday, they need to stop all that. But in reality, those bonds you're forming with your team when you're talking and get at the coffee break or on the way to the restroom, they're really helpful, not only for the individuals, but I think they're powerful for the company because you bump into somebody serendipitously in the hallway and you're having a chat about what you did this weekend. And something about a project will come up that was a great insight you didn't think about. So I think it does offer some help to the business as well.
And see, that's what we're missing with COVID. We're always on the screen, which is great. It's convenient. You don't have to travel. There's something about being at a baseball game with somebody or being at lunch with somebody or just going for a coffee. Stuff comes up and you go, hey, you're right. If we just made that little change, and then you start to ideate. It's that water cooler talk. It is important. It's important to have that mental downtime where you're just kind of shooting the breeze and ideating about stuff. Good things happen. Because why? Because you've got a relationship. You trust each other.
Yeah, I read an article recently that talked about the irony of all the shutdown and remote work was that there are some companies in Silicon Valley that would not exist today had it not been for a serendipitous meeting at a Starbucks where they bumped into each other and some great idea formed. And, that's, I think, one of the things everybody says, oh, well, technology, we don't need to go back to the office. We have Zoom. And it's not the same. You're not going to get these organic conversations or serendipitous bumps where you come up with some really great, fascinating idea because you're on the Zoom call for a reason. And when the call is over, you can't wait to get off because you've got 5 more coming up. Whereas when you're in a building face to face, of course, you get that walking down the hallway on, it's when I put this phone down and go get coffee, you don't go with me, right? You stay, you go to your kitchen, I go to my kitchen. It's not the same.
Yeah.
I love the story of Bell Helicopter's innovation team, particularly the ground rules they established to facilitate conversation between the engineers and some graphic artists they had brought in. And the rule was basically no one laughs or criticizes an idea, no matter how crazy, and you must find a way to accept at least part of any idea presented. Using those ground rules allowed that team to go from being really at odds with each other to producing some pretty incredible innovations.
Yeah. It was a fascinating case study. I'm so glad you brought it up. Laugh or criticize, you can laugh, just not at someone's expense, which was so key. Because, he brought in these designers from video games and sci-fi movies, and the aviation engineers are like, what do these guys know? They needed more innovative design. And initially, he says, it was brutal, man. They were mean to each other. That's why they had to put the ground rules in. And once they had those rules of engagement, he said, stuff started to happen, and the design was amazing. And again, it came back to, you got to respect each other. Take a little bit of that idea and incorporate it. Don't dismiss it out of hand. It's so interesting, Clint. It comes back to, what did your mom and dad teach you? Be nice. Just be nice. It doesn't cost you anything. Be kind. It's just, we had a project manager at a bigger company, and she was just brutal. They'd say, well, here's an idea. We go, well, that's dead on arrival. Really? We just spent 6 hours whiteboarding the whole thing, putting this project together, and we're 5 minutes into our presentation. And why? And why did she do it? Because it made her feel good.
Right.
I'm in control. I know everything. And so we just want to back up and go, well, then you do it. Why are we even here?
Exactly. Now, when I read and this is a quote, the ability to disagree without causing offense is essential to robust communication and problem solving within teams, end quote. And I thought, it doesn't just apply to teams. It's what we need to relearn as a society today, right?
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad you brought that up. The civility. Just be civil to each other. Say please and thank you. This vitriol that's coming out in our social divide and our political divide, it's just insane. You think, look, there's got to be common ground here somewhere. And yet it's so frustrating. And I think everybody's worried about a soundbite and a tweet and how many likes they get, how many thumbs up they get. Stop. Let's just care about each other for a minute and see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
What I see now is people have dug their foxholes, and rather than having a dialogue, they're just hurling epithets at each other, and they're not really having a dialogue. It's just, I'm screaming at you, you're screaming at me, and I hope we get to a place where we can actually have a dialogue where you said this somewhere in the book where a dialogue means you might learn something. You might actually change your mind about something, and that's so important.
Yeah, I love what you said. You might learn something. And the way you do that, you listen.
Absolutely. I have a friend that I used to have these deep philosophical conversations with, and we had this running discussion on media bias, and he ultimately changed my mind on the subject. But I noticed that I was never successful at returning the favor on other topics we discussed. Finally, I said, "You're never going to change your mind on anything, are you?" And he said, "No, because I already know the right answer." And I thought, okay, we don't need to have these deep conversations anymore, because if I'm the only one that could change his mind, we don't really need to have a discourse.
Yeah, so let's save a lot of time and breath and talk about the Knicks. Why have they been so bad for so long? Let's talk about something that won't make us want to punch each other in the face. Yeah.
Or the 76ers. You talk about the 76ers in the book and how they weren't doing that well on the court, but man, their sales team was knocking it out of the park. But we're going to leave that. They got to buy the book and read that one to learn that story. So obviously your books are available everywhere that you can get books. But if someone wants to learn more about you and your work, how can they do that?
ChesterElton.com is our website. Go there. It's got everything. Follow me on LinkedIn. We've got a wonderful gratitude journal that plays into, cheering for each other and building good teams. We've got 72,000 people that have subscribed. We drop it twice a month. Join us there. It's free. And I will tell you, we're really proud of our book, Anxiety at Work. It's the number one issue in the workplace. If you need a safe place to talk about anxiety, we've got WeThriveTogether.global. It's a free online community. If you're suffering, if you've got people that are suffering, great conversations, people that are supportive. It's not part of your employee assistance program. It's just good people trying to help good people. And our podcast, Anxiety at Work. Now, for your listeners, Clint, we got a great offer. And I know you're always looking to bring value. If you would like Adrian Gostick, my co-author, and I, to do a 1-hour session with your group, specifically on building great teams and how you deal with anxiety in the workplace. If you'll buy 100 books, we'll give you our time for free. Now, an hour of our time at a conference, we charge a lot more than you'd spend on 100 books. Trust me. All you got to do is drop a note to Christy, Christy, at GostickandElton.com. Christy at GostickandElton.com, and say, I was listening to Clint's podcast. Chester said if we bought 100 books, we can get an hour of your time. And she'll set it up for you. We are really passionate about this issue, not only because we're workplace experts, also because we've had family members deal with anxiety and we know how debilitating it can be. So buy 100 books, get an hour of our time, download the podcast, visit the community, follow us on LinkedIn, and if all else fails, go to ChesterElton.com. We'd love to connect with you there as well.
The even more germane topic now that people are working remotely and feeling isolated. So the book comes out in May, right?
May 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's an easy one to remember. May the 4th
be with you. Excellent. Chester, you've been a wonderful guest. Thanks for the conversation.
Hey, absolutely. And in closing, Clint, I love the principles you talk about because it's not just a better way to lead at work. It's a better way to live. And my mantra in the morning is be kind, be grateful, and be of service. And on that, really appreciate your time. Invite me back anytime. It's a privilege.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The Conversation with Clinton M. Padgett. To find out more about Clint, go to projectsuccess.com or pick up Clint's book, The Project Success Method, at amazon.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.